How do you know when you found the one? Meet my aunt and uncle. This is their story.
Well, we met in our hometown in Puerto Rico, in town of Vega Alta, in a small El Barrio called Maricao. We were just like any other regular teenager riding bikes on a Saturday, Sunday, and that's how we met. So we first saw each other with a couple of friends. I was with my friends, she was with her friends, and I saw her, and that's the first time I laid eyes on her. Was riding bikes, and from that moment on, as everything grew from there, little by little. I was 14. I was in the 9th grade. I believe she was in the 7th grade. We were a little young, so that's why we actually waited a little bit to start dating. So about maybe 2 years later is when we I asked her to be my girlfriend. Like 2 years after that
we
moment.
actually started like friends.
But
it was more like a friendship before we decided to get into a relationship.
I fell in love that day that actually lays eye on her riding bikes. It was right away. For me, it was right away. But for her, I don't know, because since we did not started officially became boyfriend girlfriend 2 years later, but we started with like like playing Google eyes at school, kind of like flirting back and forth, just looking at each other. Our friends saying, "Oh, he likes you. Oh, she likes you," but we weren't. Both none of us were ready. But we fell in love. I fell in love this time I saw her, but I think I was too young just to, become boyfriend and girlfriend, and I decided to wait 2 years before I asked her to be my girlfriend. But I knew she was the one from the first time I saw her.
I would say that not the first day. It was more like after a couple days went by, a couple months went by, I was like, ooh, I think I really like this guy. I think I'm falling for him. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the jacket. He used to wear a jacket to school, and I don't know if it was the jacket. I don't know. I think it was more the smile, because that's what I really like about him. It was his smile. So I was like, every day I went to school, it was just looking forward just to see him. So it was like, I would say a month after we met for the first time. And I was happy when he went to a different school and he finally decided to ask me to be his girlfriend. So I was like, ooh, finally the day is here. So yes, I would say like a month after.
I do believe in love at first sight, because like I said before, the first time I lay eyes on her, I knew she was the one. And I said, that girl is going to be my girlfriend someday. So for me, yes.
For me, I cannot say that I do believe in love at first sight, just because it was a combination of getting to know him. It was a combination of getting to see what he was all about. So I don't know if it's because I'm a female and I like to take...
Yes, I think so. Because guys, we are different. So we're more, hey, I feel, So it's a little bit different. I mean, sometimes, but for me, yes.
How did I know that he was the one? It was after getting to know him and after getting to see that side of his humbleness and the side of caring and the side of loving as a person that he was. That's when I realized he has something special, and that something special, it's gotta be mine.
Well, yeah, for me also was family. I mean, because we come from a small town, and it's a lot of, we grow up around a lot of family. So looking at her and her family, and I studied with all her cousins together in school, so we knew each other. I've been seeing her since she was like in probably 1st grade. So I kind of knew her, but I didn't know her until actually that day when I saw her, like really saw her for the first time. But I've been seeing her since she was a little kid, because we used to go to the same school from kindergarten all the way to we graduated from middle school. But I think I developed that I knew thing after I saw the relationship with the family, how they treated each other and whatnot. So, and we come kind of like from the same backgrounds as far as broken homes. So I think draw us together with something in common. So I think I knew she was the one because I kind of like wanted to protect her. Kind of like from the suffering from the past and whatnot. So it's a lot of factors that came into knowing that she was the one. Well, we dated for 9 years, but it probably took a year, maybe, until you develop like knowing a person. Like for us in our case, since I seen her, but I didn't really know her. It took us probably like a year to like share different things in our lives, like maybe holidays and just different things, getting to know our families. She needed to know mine, I needed to know hers. So it took a good year to get to know each other. The way I proposed was funny because it was actually a day where I was at the mall, and her sister, her boyfriend of her sister at that time, said, it's her birthday, why don't you buy the engagement ring? And I was like, I'm too young to get engaged. And he's like, yeah, but you need to secure your girlfriend, and that's gonna give a sense of security. And it's like, maybe it's right, maybe it's a good gift. And she was like probably maybe 16 years old or something like that, around there. I was almost leaving high school at that time, so I kind of like was transitioning to college, going away. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to say, okay, I need to secure, my girlfriend. And since I knew she was the one, I said, okay, so let me go ahead and buy her the engagement ring. And I didn't propose marriage at that time. I just gave her engagement ring, saying, I kind of like a promise, like ring. A promise ring, saying, hey, someday I'm gonna marry you. Not now, but here's a ring stating that, like kind of like you're my property kind of thing. But that's how I kind of proposed to her, that saying, hey, I'm committing to you, that you're the one. That was it. That was it. After that, it was
I will have to say that he still owes me.
Yeah, I still owe her formal proposal.
We've been married for what, 20
years. But I kind of like the day
he owes me that.
We marry in May, so maybe some point in June, I'm sorry, not June, January. I say, hey, why don't we get married in the summer? Some point in May, it all went like so fast. I just say, hey, let's get married. And it was not like a really take her to dinner. Hey, will you marry me? I never say that.
Romantic.
I guess I never watched enough movies of proposals. So at that time, it was more like I was like a real country type of guy.
There was no social media back then, no cell phones
nothing
with internet or anything like that.
So I had no ideas on how to propose anyways. It was more like, hey, let's get married, let's pick this date, and that was it.
But when he told me about that date, like to pick the date, it was like 7 years after he gave me the engagement ring. So we took it real slow. I
had no idea going into marriage, what I was going to expect. It was like a leap of faith, jumping together into marriage. So it was like, all right, let's get married and see how it goes, type of thing. But we actually went to at a church that we were part of, kind of like involved in the youth, and they had like a couple of pre-marriage like retreats, and that's kind of like was the base for us to something to build on as far as marriage. So I can't say it was a leap of faith, but also we had a little bit of guidance from the church. We had to go for like 6 months to like a marriage counseling type of thing, where they teach you the different, what marriage means, how it should have been, how should you treat your wife,
your spouse.
But kind of like, it's a little different once you get married. I think at that point, we were in a different spot in our lives.
In my case, I was always the one like trying to push that day as much as I could, just because I came from a broken home, and divorce was a big thing that actually hurt me a lot. That's why I had to test him for many years and see what was he all about. because I always said, no man will ever hurt me the way my father did. And that was always in the back of my head. Like, I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be cheated on. So for me, it was like always I had this wall between the two of us. I always had that wall. And it was because of my past and the things that I went through with my dad.
We spent them in Puerto Rico. The first years of marriage were kind of like getting to know a person and live with that person. It was fun since we were already know each other for so many years. So we did a lot of things together. Everything we did around the house was together. We cleaned together, kind of like
we were best friends.
Yeah.
From day one, we were best friends.
Yeah.
And we enjoy every single new experience.
Yeah.
Waking up together, cooking together, learning to cook together.
Yeah. And it was more like falling into schedule, because since we have work, it was kind of like jumping from youth into adulthood. Like, all right, now we have responsibilities, and we had to learn kind of like, oh, what's my sleeping schedule? What's my, coming home schedule? And then we also had our firstborn was like, we were expecting a baby like right away.
Right away.
After our honeymoon, kind of like we had our first child. And so everything came like all in one, like together. So we actually had to grow up quick or mature quick.
Our life
quicker
changed
than other relationships.
180 the moment we got married. Because the moment we got married, we got pregnant, and here we go. It came the baby, and that was it.
Correct.
It
So
was no longer me,
and
it was no longer him. It was a combination of the three.
Yeah, it threw us in a different process when you're expecting a child like right after your honeymoon by ourselves. That was it. And it was all preparation for the baby that was coming. So it was kind of like, okay, schedule, learning how to process each other, like living together, and also a third person on the way. So we were learning how to be, instead of 2, 3 right away. The pregnancy was beautiful. It was good. She didn't have any, complications or any like symptoms.
No,
all she wanted was just pizza. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like, all right, pizza, I'm up for pizza. But the pregnancy was nice. I remember she was very protective, because where we live, it was next to my parents, in a house, not with my parents, but next to our parents. We had our separate house. So my mom and my dad were very protective of her and the baby, because they were so excited that, I was their only son at the time. So
living close
by too. Well, my sisters already had moved out. So my dad took that kind of like grandpa protective role. Like, he would not let her drive to work. Like, he will take her every day to work and pick her up, because she drive stick car. And he's like, no, nobody pregnant should be driving stick car. I need to take you to work and pick you up. So kind of like, I'm very grateful that my dad was there, because he was kind of like protecting the baby and protecting her while I was at work, which was a great blessing for us to have that help and that support of our family, which is very important, I think. Mm-hmm. But the pregnancy itself was very good. It was very easy for us. Our firstborn child, was Paola. That's what we named her. When we moved out of Puerto Rico, we went to live to Rhode Island. We transitioned, and then we came here and bought a house in Orlando, Florida. I went to Puerto Rico for a trip to bury my grandpa, who had passed away. When I came from that trip, that was January in 2004. That was January 2004, and she just woke up. We saw she had a lot of fevers, and one night in the morning she just woke up having seizures.
Us unknowing that it was a seizure.
Correct.
Because we have never experienced anything to do with epilepsy, anything to do with seizures, anything related to, remember, we were only 24 at a time, 20,
yes.
25?
Yeah.
I was 25, he was probably 26. She was well and she was healthy, and I remember watching this movie the night before, and we were together. Ever since we moved to this house, she never wanted to sleep in her room by herself, which was weird, because in Puerto Rico she had her own room. When we moved to Rhode Island, she had her separate room. And to me, it was like God preparing us to what was to come. And ever since we got into this home, she never wanted to sleep by herself. That night, I still remember like it was yesterday. And we were watching the movie Radio.
Yeah.
And I was crying my tears out. My eyes were like completely swollen that night. And I remember just telling him on this side of the bed, Paola was in the middle between us. And I remember telling him, we have to give God so many things and be so grateful because we have a healthy child. Those were my last words that night. And then that morning, like around 6, I wake up because someone was shaking next to me. And I was like, what's going on? Why is she shaking? And it was Paola shaking. And I was like, Brian, Paola's not responding. What's going on? What's wrong? And he woke up and I just jumped into the car. We didn't even think about calling 911.
I just jumped into the car and just turned it on and just drove us straight to the hospital like I have stolen something. Kind of like
me on my PJs, I had no shoes on.
Yeah,
it was just an emergency. She wasn't responding, so we were like, okay, we have to go.
But that time Paola was 2 years old, so we would just have moved into the house probably like 3 months into this new home, and she was 2 when that happened. Well, we made it to the hospital. It was funny in the midst of the emergency. It was funny because I was being followed by cops. I was being chased because they saw me the way I was driving in between traffic. I was driving like a maniac, like I was stealing something, and they wanted to chase me down and shoot me down. So I had the cops behind me, and I was driving all the way until I got to the hospital here, and probably by me like 10, 15 minutes from our home. I probably made it there in 7 minutes. I'm not lying.
And I was holding Paola, and I was trying to still make her respond, and she wasn't responding.
She was seizing all the way for those 7 minutes from the house to the hospital. So we got to the hospital, and she got out of the car, and I stayed. I said, go ahead, go in. I'm gonna park the car. And when I parked the car, the cop came and intercepted me, and he kind of like saw me crying. So when he saw me crying, he just asked me what happened. And the only word came out of my mouth was my daughter. And then he's like, it's okay, just park the car and go inside. So he kind of like, let me go right away. He didn't even ask any questions. So when we got to the hospital, they took us quick into the emergency room.
Yeah, they took her
they did all the study, took spinal cord fluid from his spine, and did all the CT scans and everything. And
they ended up doing the CT scan because she was seizing for so long.
So they wouldn't know if she had any brain damage. So they want to see if it's a ball clot or something had go into her brain.
While the kids are seizing, their oxygen level is completely low.
It goes down. So after all the studies, and when we were there, the doctor came out and said, "Hey, we kind of see like a little tumor in her brain. I don't know if it's a tumor or if it's a blood clot actually, because we need to transfer you to another hospital where they can do a little bit more study on her." So right away they just grabbed an ambulance and they took us down to Florida Hospital South, which is where they diagnosed that it was indeed a brain tumor over there after like 2-3 days of studies in that hospital. So that's what happened when we got to the hospital. We got the news that officially it was a brain tumor like 3 days later, and the doctor told us that most likely it was a benign tumor that she had because she had seizures. It was like he told us the name. He told us it was a ganglioma tumor in the front lobe of her eye, behind her eye. So he right away, they told us, hey, we have to operate, remove the tumor, and she should be fine after that because it's what we see as a benign tumor. So they did the surgery at the hospital like maybe a couple of days later, and it was indeed a benign tumor. They said that the 2 reasons for the seizures could be fever, because it was so high, but in her case was because of the tumor, because the tumor was already blocking the electricity of her brain. The signals that were being sent was bouncing off that tumor, and it was not letting. That's what creates the the seizure in a person. As basically our brain is made up of all these electricity in it, and they bounce off each other, and it travels. So when it finds something that is blocking it or on the way, it basically bounces back, and that's what creates epilepsy or a seizure in this case. Well, I felt sad, devastated, because I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know nothing about tumors. I didn't know nothing about, how the brain works. So it's kind of like new waters for me. Right away, when they gave me the news, my wife came to the house to take a shower and pick up new clothes, fresh clothes, to go back to the hospital. And I called her right away, and I told her.
In my case, when I heard the news about the brain tumor, I felt completely broken. I felt completely devastated. Imagine having the firstborn and the only child. And it was the first time that I left her for a few minutes just to come home and shower and go back with extra clothing and hear the news. It was my sister who was here with me. And she was the one that told me the news while I was in the shower. I still remember everything so vividly, like it happened a few minutes ago. And when she told me, she was already in tears, she was already crying. I collapsed in the shower, and I was like, because from the moment we got admitted to the hospital, I was already in a sense of, I was numb. I was completely numb. I was painless. I was like, people will come and give me information, and I was like, what else? What else can we take? What else is coming? Because I was there with my baby, and my baby was like receiving all these needles and all these shots, and she was always in tears, and she was always hugging me, and she was always crying, "Mommy, it hurts, Mommy, it hurts." So for me, it was more painful because I was like feeling her pain and including my pain. So I became numb, and I was just like I would say a walking zombie. Like I turned completely numb. So when my sister told me, that was like the icing of the cake, and it was completely devastating. And I just cried and screamed, and that was my experience. The options that the doctors gave us, it was a group of doctors. I'm talking about the oncologist, neurologist, neurosurgeon, the pediatrician. What they told us was, Mom and Dad, we know it's a complicated situation, it's a complicated surgery, but what we recommend you guys is for her to have the surgery so we can remove the tumor and send it to pathology so they can tell us whether the tumor is a benign or not, so we can have an action plan after finding out what they were going to be dealing with.
At that time, we were able to handle it more with the support of the family at that time. Unfortunately, we were not serving the Lord like we are now. So our faith was not as strong as it is now these days.
And I believe that's why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
Yeah.
The emptiness, the sadness, the
Yeah.
depression that I was going through.
Yeah, but at that time, our strength came more from our family than anything, because that's the only thing we knew, and the only thing we had was the support system around us, which is very, very important. It was huge at that time.
And
but
we're extremely grateful.
Yeah,
that
we're
we
very
had
grateful
that.
for them, because everybody was involved. Everybody was praying. A lot of prayers were going everywhere in this country, in Puerto Rico, everywhere. So a lot of people were praying for her, but the support of our family was the most important thing at that time.
Just talking about the hospital situation, and the most surprising thing that happened to me at that moment, I can say that the day they were coming to pick her up to take her over to surgery, because she was so little and she was so afraid of being with strangers, they allowed me to go with her all the way to the pre-operation room. And I remember asking the guy that took me over from her room to the pre-operation area, asking, am I going to be able to see her neurosurgeon before she goes into surgery? And they told me no. They never come. They never see the parents before surgery. They're already getting ready for the surgery. And even though we were not active in the church, we were not active
In the faith.
in the faith, I remember telling God, I don't want my daughter to go to any surgery unless you send me the surgeon so I can pray with him, touch those hands, and make sure that you're going to take control over the surgery. So I remember just asking for him, and he said, no, they don't come here. It's only the anesthesiologist that is going to come and take her from you. He's going to give her like a little juice, which is a medicine, that is going to help her become numb and just follow instructions, but she's not going to remember anything of this that is going on, because it's a little painful for the child to be just separated from the people they know, which is the parents in this case. So as I'm waiting there, all I see is a neurosurgeon show up. And I was like, okay, so that gave me a sense of peace. I'm like, okay, God is in the midst of the whole situation because he sent me this guy here. But now how am I going to have the courage to go and say, hey, can I hold your hands? Because I need to pray for you. But because when you're a mother and your child is in such a crisis, you don't care about what other people will say or think. All you got to do is walk by faith and not by sight. I ask, he gave me his hands, and I pray over those hands, and he took my daughter himself all the way to the operating room. So that to me was like a confirmation.
That God was taking care of us and listening to
our
our prayers and in the midst of our turbulence at that time.
After surgery, the doctor told us it was going to take anywhere between 6 to 7 hours, because of it was a brain surgery, and he wanted to make sure he did everything right. And because he also told me he had a daughter the same age, he was going to treat Paola the same way he would treat his own daughter. So we finally went to eat something, and it wasn't not even 30 minutes into the surgery. An hour?
No, it was like 2 hours.
2 hours?
2 hours.
We were waiting like in this waiting area where they had the parents of or family members of people that were having surgeries. And we will always see nurses coming out to deliver the news. Okay, he is done, she's done. And in our case, it was another shocking moment for me, and I was about to pass out because there was no nurse. It was the surgeon that came out to the waiting room, and I was like, oh, this cannot be good. So he told us, okay, mom and dad, come over, we need to talk. And when he got us in the room, I remember I just wanted to stay. I was standing, and he's like, you can have a seat. And I was like, no, what happened? And he was like, oh, everything went fine, she's well, you guys are gonna be able to see her. And based on my experience and my knowledge, it's a benign tumor, mom. So all we have to do to confirm it is send it to pathology, but based on my experience, she should be good to go pretty soon.
After he delivered the news, it was kind of like a relief for us. After he came out and after surgery and told us about, how the tumor was, by his experience, a benign tumor. And he basically said, and we asked, so when she's going to be able to eat, walk? He's like, no, she'll be fine. She'll be able to have a cheeseburger once she recovers quick. So it was kind of like a relief, after when he came out and told us, delivered the news himself personally. At that time, everything was successful, yes.
Everything was successful, and we thought we were done with the nightmare completely.
We thought we were done with the tumor and everything else, but we didn't know that God was sending us into a path that we were not prepared for, or God was moving in a way kind of like to let us know, hey, I'm calling your attention for something. And that's when everything started. I think when the surgery ended, it started our journey to something new, something different, a bumpy road, kind of like, if we want to put it that way, but a road that God would show us his glory and how he was going to be with us and in the midst of everything. So I think that was like our starting point to something new with the Lord. Not knowingly at that time, we had to wait almost 11 years in this road to kind of like come out on the other side and kind of like see, and look back with everything. But yeah, it was a starting point for us, not the end of Paola's journey or our journey as a family,